So the Chicago Bulls could end up looking very different in a couple years because their front office is probably going to be completely different. Arturas Karnisovas, previously the GM of the Nuggets, is now taken over. His exact position is the Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations. John Paxson is demoted. Gar Forman, currently the GM, but it seems like he's not going to be much longer. So that's great. I'm sure Bulls fans are happy because GarPax has been probably the one thing they have been unified on for the past few years. That and that Boylen is just not a good coach. So that's all great. Hopefully we can get just some new brains deciding what the Chicago Bulls do basketball-wise. And if we look at Karnisovas' resume a little bit, he's been an assistant GM with the Nuggets since 2013, so he was there when they drafted Jokic, and they basically just made this entire team that they've got now, drafted Murray and Monte Morris and whoever else. He was the GM for the last couple years. He drafted Michael Porter Jr., which I think we would all agree the pick itself was good, even if Mike Malone has not given MPJ the runway to be awesome like that. So I'd say the guy's got a pretty good resume up to this point, right? And so we just hope he carries that over to Chicago. And the thing is, there are some decisions that need to be made. I mean, do we really believe that Levine and Markkanen are going to be on max contracts in 2023 for this team? I mean, perhaps if they just turn it around pretty quick next season, which maybe that's possible if they fire Boylen and get a coach who is actually good and liked by his players. I mean, Kenny Atkinson is out there, we know that one, and whoever else could be available. So that's probably, step 3 in the process? Step 1 is find a GM. 2 would be the draft. We'll have to see where they end up in the lottery. And then 3 is going to be a coach. And hopefully they nail it with the coach. The draft is always tricky, but with a coach you can get a little bit more of a sure thing, and just getting a coach who realizes how good Markkanen is probably the best thing for you. Markkanen does need to get a little more aggressive and stuff, but that'd be the first thing. If I was running the show, I would look to see if there is a world in which I actually could max out Levine and Markkanen. If I get a good coach in there and the culture shifts and everybody's happy and the X's and O's are good and I get a little lucky with health and all that, then perhaps the Bulls would win 45 games next season and Markkanen's averaging 20-something a game and Levine makes progress as a playmaker. That would be the way I'd go about it, but I'm just some dude talking on YouTube. They may decide that they're all in on Markkanen or Levine and they don't really like the other one. When I say they, I mean just the new people who are going to be running this team, coaching staff, front office, all that stuff. And it's going to make it very interesting. I mean, I think regardless of who we believe is better between Levine or Markkanen, doesn't totally matter. The reason I'm saying all this is because I just find it not impossible, but I would find it pretty wild if, again, both of these guys were on max contracts for this team, unless this team has a drastic turnaround kind of immediately. So then it just becomes who do you pick? And I mean, Levine is certainly the better player right now, but you can argue if Markkanen is in the right system where he's able to handle the ball some and he's encouraged to shoot and he takes more threes and all that stuff, could Markkanen not average 27 points a game one day? I don't think it's insane. He's a 7-footer who can make threes and do stuff off the dribble, and he can dribble in transition and stuff too. He's a really talented big. So we don't know. But there are other decisions that need to be made about this team. For one, Otto Porter. His contract is up after this season because we assume he's going to accept his $28 million player option. They're going to hold on to him. I mean, I would imagine definitely not for that much money, but if you could get him for, let's say, I mean, it's tough because we don't know where the cap's going to be after we're eventually back to playing basketball again, but maybe you can get Otto for $17 million a season for 3 or 4 years. Maybe you'd hold on to him at that point because when he's healthy, there's still potential for him to be pretty damn good, if you ask me, if you encourage him to dribble and be a little more aggressive. Chris Dunn, his contract, I mean, I think Dunn showed some real defensive strides this season. The Bulls' defense was not as horrible as you might believe it based on their record, and I think Chris Dunn played a part in that. Basically, it's just going to be interesting to see who this front office believes needs to be held on to and who they think is expendable for what, you know? But also, who would get you whatever in a trade? I mean, you know, if I believe that it would be tough to see Markkanen and Levine maxed out, and that means I gotta picture one of them being traded, because you're definitely not gonna let them walk for anything. And I mean, if we start opening up that can of worms, then who has the higher trade value? I don't really know. I mean, it's impossible to tell. Like, I'm pretty sure I predicted Markkanen to win Most Improved Player of the season, and he just wasn't good. So it's like, I don't know. Who would want either one of these dudes? I mean, if Levine became available, you know, a scoring guard who can make shots from outside and stuff, I think the Magic would certainly want him. I don't see why they wouldn't. The Magic would probably want both of these guys, to be honest. They need some shooting. I mean, almost anybody could use a 25-point scorer. Like, we can argue all day long about Levine and his impact on winning and all that. But I gotta think there would be at least one team that thought, if we got that guy into what we're doing, then it could be a real positive for us. You know what I mean? I think the same things can be said for Markkanen. The thing with Markkanen is, though, because he can play, just because the type of player he is, you know, the 7-foot guy who looks like a two-guard sometimes, like, maybe he would be more of an attractive trade dude. Probably the fact that he's making less money than Levine as well. I keep pushing the idea that one of these dudes is going to be traded. There's a chance that they're both going to be here long term. I just, you know, is either one of these guys going to be a 5-time All-Star? I mean, maybe. The over-under for both of them might be 3 or 4, I guess. And so it's like, are we just going to commit the majority of the team's salary to those two players? Unless, again, there's a world in which you can get both of them for cheap based on their talents. And, hey, maybe they could pull some wizardry to have that done, but I don't know. So it's all just going to be very interesting. But again, I would like to at least give it a chance before you just decide, you know what? We're going to just flip the whole thing over, you know? Because I would like to believe that there could be a world in which Levine, Markkanen, Wendell, Otto, maybe a different point guard can be good, assuming the coach is good, you know? I guess this is another idea, is could the Bulls be up for any other sort of trade this offseason? Because again, you never know with front offices. Sometimes they like to get kind of wild. And, you know, Otto's contract, it's a great salary filler. The problem then would be, like, who are you moving in terms of players if you wanted to hold on to Markkanen and Levine? And I don't even know who the other player you'd be taking in here would be, but let's say they got nuts and they wanted to get Chris Paul, okay? Chicago thinks we get CP, shifts the culture immediately, helps out Levine and Markkanen. Whether OKC would want to do that, no clue. But just something on that level. It could be somebody else, because stuff happens every offseason that we don't see coming, right? Do we think the Bulls are going to give up any picks? I guess it would depend on the protections, but I don't think I would. You know, they don't have any extra firsts, and that's dicey, you know, for a team that hasn't been in the playoffs for a while to go and trade picks like that. But I don't know. I mean, is there a chance Chris Dunn could be moved for somebody if some team just loves the defense he was playing this year and they think his offense can be something combined with Otto moving over? Like, I really don't know. I mean, Thad Young and Satoransky are basically expirings because both of their contracts are not fully guaranteed in 2022, so I think those two become assets as a result. There's just a lot of stuff with this Bulls team, and as a result, I think you could go in so many different directions, and we're gonna have to see the direction that Karnisovas and hopefully a new GM want to go. But again, if it was me, I'd be all in on finding a good coach and seeing if I can get the team that I currently have to make sense, because there is talent on this roster. It's not a team that's devoid of anybody who can shoot or do something off the dribble. Like, there is a world in which you've got two 20-point scorers next season, you know what I mean? And a guy who can give you a solid 16 in Otto Porter. So I don't think you got to give up on it all just yet, but even with Boylen not being great, this team won 22 games. So let's not be like, well, you got to keep the whole thing afloat. So we'll have to see.